I recently went through a personal nightmare. The HOA president shoved a master key into my beloved F100 on my own damn property. Her reasoning, she claimed she was simply relocating it to comply with community rules. The ironic part, the only thing moved that day was my passion, straight from my gut to the edge of my clenched fist. But let me back up a bit. The first thing I noticed was a cheap metal key jammed into my truck's lock. Not just any vehicle, my pride and joy, a 1972 Ford F100 cherry red, rebuilt 390 V8 with a growl like thunder. I didn't just purchase it, I rebuilt it. Every nut, every component, a product of sweat, labor, and 3 solid years of weekends shared with my best friend Jake. So when I saw someone trying to break into it, my heart stopped and then detonated. And there she was, Karen, the HOA president, reeking of authority and drugstore perfume. She acted like she ran the whole block from her imaginary throne. And now she was laying claim to my truck. She didn't even blink when I stepped out and let the screen door slam behind me. That sharp bob haircut, the HOA-branded polo, clipboard no doubt tucked under her elbow. She wore them like a badge of righteousness. She smiled like she'd found a loophole in the laws of reality. Standing beside her was Richard, her husband, arms folded, chin trembling, eyes glued to my truck like he already had it in his garage. "Can I help you?" I asked, voice low and steady. Over time, I've learned that whispering, while angry, pulls more weight than shouting. People lean in just before the explosion. Karen finally acknowledged me. She held up the keyring, an oversized bundle like a prison janitor's. "This vehicle," she said, nodding at my truck, "violates Article 7, Section C of the Community Bylaws. It's improperly parked." I looked at the truck. It sat squarely in my driveway, the same place it had rested for months. "It's on my property," I replied. "Your driveway," she shot back like a line from a community theater play, "is considered common frontage subject to aesthetic review. This is classified as a work vehicle. The tires are oversized. It is not permitted as a family vehicle. Multiple warnings have been issued." Yeah, I'd seen those notices. "They made good kindling for my barbecue. It's a classic car. It's on private property. You don't get to touch it." Richard snorted. "Oh, we can't. The rules say unapproved vehicles can be towed. At your expense. Karen's just doing you a favor by moving it herself to the impound lot." By impound lot, he meant the weed-ridden patch behind the community pool where rotting benches go to die. Karen gave that awful, tight-lipped grin again. "I have a master key to all community-facing properties. It's for emergencies. Trying to steal my truck isn't an emergency." I replied, fists curling tight at my sides. Every fiber in me screamed to act, but that's exactly what she wanted. She hoped I'd snap. I'm a big man. I know what it looks like when people like me lose control. So I held still. "You're attempting to illegally access my personal property. That's a crime. It's not a crime to enforce the rules you agreed to," she said sweetly, oozing phony composure. Then she shoved the key again into the lock. I heard the metal strain, my jaw clenched. That was my paint she was scratching. "Step away from the truck, Karen. Now. Or what?" She sneered over her shoulder. "You'll assault a defenseless woman doing her duty." I breathed slow. This was a setup, a baited trap. "No, I'm warning you, that lock is custom. Jake and I installed it ourselves." And right then, the cheap key bent with a dull snap. It didn't break off, but it was mangled. Karen stared at it, her smug look draining to rage. She yanked it out, hurled her whole keyring onto the ground, then slammed her clipboard into my fender. The bang echoed, and a long scratch sliced into my perfect red paint. That was it. Rage surged up my spine, but instinct took over. I'd served 10 years as a military police officer. I knew this game. People like Karen provoke until you react, then cry victim, but two can play. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I stood firm. Karen, furious she couldn't bait me, whipped out her phone and began tapping furiously. "You see this, Richard? He's acting hostile. He's cornering me." Richard chimed in, "He's dangerous. We feel threatened." Karen dialed. Her tone flipped to dramatic, tearful panic. 911. Yes, I need help. I'm at 124 Chestnut Drive. A large man is threatening me on his property. I'm the HOA president. I was enforcing a bylaw, and now I'm scared for my safety. Please hurry." She ended the call, beaming like she'd just declared checkmate. She expected the police to show up, see a big guy and a sobbing woman, and side with her. She thought she'd won. What she didn't know, I'd installed security cameras 2 weeks ago after someone slashed my tires. One was aimed directly at the driveway. It recorded crystal, clear video and audio. The next 10 minutes, pure satisfaction. Karen and Richard whispered and schemed. I stood quietly on my porch. My neighbor Louis peeked through his blinds. Sirens approached. First one cruiser, then a second pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, one young and stern, the other older, mustached and visibly exhausted. Karen ran up, tears flowing. "Thank God. He threatened me," she cried, finger trembling toward me. The older cop looked at me, then at my truck, then at her. "Ma'am, what exactly happened?" Karen rattled off her script. Richard added flares, something about me charging at them. I stepped off the porch calmly, hands raised. "Officer, that's not what happened. She attempted to break into my truck and damaged it. I have video of the entire event." Karen paused mid-sob. "You can't record me. That's illegal." The older officer sighed. "Ma'am, in this state, public-facing areas carry no expectation of privacy. If the camera's on his house, it's legal, sir." I said, "I have everything." From her walking up to the fake 911 call, I showed them the footage. Karen's expression crumbled. The video revealed every detail, her jamming the key, me calmly asking her to stop, her smashing the clipboard, her false emergency call. The cop watched twice, then looked at his partner, who had been taking notes. He turned to Karen. His professional tone was gone. "Ma'am, your statement doesn't align with the evidence. You filed a false police report. Serious offense. Also, unlawful entry and vandalism." Karen's jaw fell open. "What? I'm the HOA president. I'm allowed." "You're not allowed to break the law." He interrupted. He gestured to her keys. "Those yours." She nodded silently. "We'll need that as evidence," he said. The younger cop bagged the keys. "Ma'am, place your hands behind your back." Karen turned ghostly pale. Richard sputtered, "You can't do this. We have friends on the council." The officer ignored him. He handcuffed Karen while reading her rights right there beside my scratched fender. She stared daggers at me as they walked her to the squad car, the queen dethroned, now behind bars. They took my statement and gave me a case number. A detective would follow up. As they drove off, Karen glaring from behind the window, Richard shot me one last furious look before slinking back to his dull beige house. I thought it was over, that I'd finally won, but when I ran my hand over the fresh gouge in my truck's side, I spotted a note beneath the wiper, not from the cops, another HOA notice. That's when I knew the real war had just begun. This mess didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building quietly, like a leak you ignore until the floor gives way. I moved here 2 years ago looking for calm. After a decade in military law enforcement, dealing with the worst humanity has to offer, I just wanted a peaceful street, a garage for my projects, and neighbors who minded their own business. For 6 months, it was perfect. I bought a modest home with a spacious 2-car garage. The garage was the deal maker, my haven. First thing I moved in, the F-100. That truck means more than anyone knows. It's not just metal, it's Jake's legacy. The last thing we restored together before he deployed to a mission I couldn't join. He never came back. We found the truck abandoned in a farmer's lot. Every weekend, every free moment, we brought it back to life. Jake mastered engines. I handled the bodywork. When I'm under that hood, I still hear his jokes, his voice. That truck is my heartbeat, my tether to him, my therapy. Trouble began subtly. The first HOA notice was about my grass, supposedly a quarter-inch too high. I measured, I trimmed it anyway. Next, a fine for leaving trash cans visible for 2 hours after pickup $1.50. I paid it, annoyed. Then I started noticing things. The whole neighborhood felt manufactured. Too pristine, like a movie set. All lawns identical, every house beige, no toys, no hoops, no personality. Sterile. That's when I heard about Karen. My neighbor Louis told me, retired mailman in his 70s, joyful soul with a yard full of gnomes. A whole tacky gnome village. She's a tyrant. Louis said over the fence one day. She got elected. 5 years ago, they ran on a promise to preserve property values. In practice, that translated into making everyone miserable. Louis shared stories with me. One family had to repaint their front door because Karen thought the blue they chose looked too cheerful. Another couple had to dismantle a brand new swing set because the Architectural Review Board, made up entirely of Karen and her husband Richard, never signed off on it. According to Louis, Richard was the HOA treasurer. He was the one who collected the fines and filed liens against homeowners who didn't pay. My first real clash with Karen happened over the truck. It was parked in my driveway, just like the day she called the police. She knocked. When I answered the door, she skipped any greeting and just pointed. "That vehicle is an eyesore," she said. "It brings down the whole neighborhood. It's a vintage restoration." I replied, trying to keep things civil. "It's my personal project. This neighborhood isn't for hobbies involving grease and racket." She sniffed, acting like she could detect motor oil from 20 feet away. "This is a dignified community. Keep it in the garage." "I usually do," I responded, my patience thinning. I was waxing it. Am I not allowed to wax my own truck on my own property? Her eyes narrowed. "Watch the attitude. Consider this your warning. Keep it hidden." She turned on her heel and walked off without another word. I felt a surge of anger boil inside me, but I swallowed it. It wasn't worth the confrontation, not yet. I hoped that if I stayed quiet, they'd focus on someone else, but that didn't happen. The warnings kept arriving. My garden hose was labeled improperly stored. I had a non-compliant welcome mat. I even got penalized for noise because I had the radio on in my garage one Saturday afternoon. Classic rock, not loud, just apparently offensive to someone. Every fine was small, $50 or $100, but they added up. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. The intent was to wear you down, make you feel powerless. Jake would have found it ridiculous. He'd have told me to stand up and make noise. He was always the fiery one, the rule breaker. I was more calculated, a strategist. I thought things through, found the weakness, then moved. My decade in military police had only sharpened those skills. I learned yelling louder doesn't win. Out. Thinking your opponent does. Using their rules and arrogance to undo them. That's the key. So when I received that first citation claiming the truck was a commercial vehicle, I knew things were escalating. I sent a formal letter back to the board, citing the state's legal definition of a classic vehicle versus a commercial one. I attached my registration and laid out everything clearly. I thought that would settle it. Facts should matter, right, wrong. I got a one-line reply signed by Karen. The committee's decision is final. No reasoning, no discussion, just power. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about property rules. It was about control. Karen and Richard thrived on ordering people around, and my truck, distinct, loud, proudly non-beige, represented rebellion. It was something personal in their world of cookie. cut her sameness, and they couldn't stand it. Richard especially. I'd catch him watching it from his window. He drove a forgettable silver luxury sedan that looked identical to every other car on the street. He glared at my truck with a mix of resentment and envy. He despised it because it was mine, because it symbolized a freedom he didn't have. So, when I saw Karen attempting to break into it, everything made sense. This was the peak of their long campaign of harassment. Her final play to eliminate what didn't conform. She never expected resistance. She thought I'd fold like the others, but when I didn't, when I stood my ground and recorded her, it broke her. She couldn't grasp that someone might push back. Her only response was to double down, lie, call the police, and paint herself the victim. After the cops drove off with her in the back seat, I stood in my driveway for a while. Everything was still. Louis flashed me a discreet thumbs up before closing his blinds. I picked up the HOA notice she'd wedged under my wiper earlier, a formal declaration, a last warning. My truck would be removed within 24 hours, and a new fine, $1,000 for non-compliance and creating a hostile community atmosphere. It was dated for the next day. She'd prepared it all before she even tried to break into the truck. It was all planned. I crushed the paper in my hand. They'd drawn their line, or more accurately, scratched mine. They thought one arrest would scare me into giving up. They thought I'd accept the minor win, pay the fine, and drop it. They had no idea who they were provoking. They'd just roused a bear that was very, very done being poked, and this bear knew how to lay traps. The morning after Karen's brief jail visit was strangely calm. I half expected a fleet of tow trucks, but my F-100 sat untouched, sunlight glinting off its surface, even with the scratch. Louis, who had a gossip network worthy of the CIA, told me Richard had posted her bail within hours. She was back home, no doubt plotting her next move with a mug of tepid coffee. The $1,000 fine notice sat on my kitchen counter like a challenge. I wasn't going to pay it. That would mean admitting guilt. And I was done being passive. 2 days later, retaliation arrived, not a tow truck, something worse. My mailbox started filling with official-looking envelopes, each one from the HOA, each carrying a new violation. My hedges were suddenly labeled overgrown, $75 fine. A small crack in the driveway, there since I'd bought the place, was now deemed a structural issue $200 fine. They even fined me $150 for an oil stain in my driveway, one that didn't exist. It was a paper war. I could tell Richard was behind it. Karen might have been the loud one, the queen bee, but Richard held the strings. He was the one managing the accounts, issuing the charges, and tracking who paid. The quiet venom behind the curtain. Since he couldn't get the truck, he'd decided to bleed me dry. My house, my wallet, my peace. He was targeting them all. Louis, my garden gnome, loving neighbor, became my go-to for intel. He'd stroll over at dusk, pretending to check his flowers, and drop bits of neighborhood news. They're having late-night meetings. He whispered one evening, unfamiliar cars pulling up after dark. Even Louis wasn't spared. He got cited for excessive lawn decoration. Each gnome fined $1.20, with 53 gnomes that was over $1,000. Outrageous, cruel, but revealing. Their strategy was simple. Issue absurd fines until people paid out of fear or moved away. "What are you gonna do?" Louis asked, clearly worried. "That Richard guy looks at your truck like he wants to take a bat to it. Let him try." I replied, my tone cold. "I'm not leaving, Louis, and you're not paying a dime for those gnomes. I'm not. No, we're fighting this." Then a week later, the real threat came. A certified letter from the HOA lawyer landed in my hands. It said I owed $925. If unpaid within 30 days, they'd file a lien against my property. A lien, that was the nuclear option. It would destroy my credit, block any chance of selling or refinancing. They'd essentially own a piece of my home, over a truck, over my refusal to back down. My first call was to Jake's brother, Ben, a lawyer. I told him everything: the harassment, the mounting fines, Karen's arrest, my video proof, and now the lien threat. He was silent for a long time. Mark, he finally said, this is more than a cranky HOA. Threatening a lien over this, that's extreme. They're trying to force you out. I know.
I said, so what can I do? Sue them? You could. Ben answered, but lawsuits are expensive and slow, and some HOA have rules that make you pay their legal fees if you lose. It's a big risk. I ended the call with a sick feeling in my stomach. They had the rules, the lawyer, and the system on their side. I was just one guy. I went out to my garage and stared at my truck. The scratch felt like it was on me. That's what they wanted, for me to feel beaten. To think giving in was the only option, but as I stood there, something shifted. I didn't feel defeated. I felt fire. It felt like a barrage of paperwork. This had Richard's fingerprints all over it. Karen was the loud, overbearing figurehead, the one who drew attention. But Richard, he held the purse strings. As treasurer, he sent out the fines and tracked the dues. He was the quiet manipulator behind the curtain. When they couldn't take my truck, Richard shifted tactics. He aimed to crush me financially. He targeted my house, my bank account, the very stability I'd been trying to protect. Louis, my quirky neighbor who adored garden gnomes, stepped up as my unofficial spy. Most evenings he'd stroll over, pretending to check on his award, winning petunias, and relay the latest gossip. There holding meetings, he murmured one night, eyes wide, strange cars come and go from their place after dark. Louis wasn't immune either. They fined him for having too many gnomes, $20 apiece. With 53 gnomes, that meant over $1,000. Ridiculous, yes, but it revealed their tactics. Make the punishments so outrageous that people would rather pay or give up and move away. What are you going to do? Louis asked, genuinely concerned. That Richard guy looks at your truck like he wants to smash it with a hammer. Let him try. I replied, voice cold. I'm staying put, and you're not paying for your gnomes. Darn right I'm not. We'll fight this, he said. A week later, the final blow arrived, a certified letter from the HOA attorney. It claimed I owed $925. If I didn't pay in 30 days, they'd place a lien on my house. That was their big move. A lien would wreck my credit, lock me out of refinancing, and tie up any attempt to sell. They'd own a piece of my home, all because I refused to hide my truck, all because I wouldn't back down. My first call was to Jake's older brother, Ben, a lawyer. I laid it all out: fines, harassment, the video of Karen's arrest, and now the lien threat. Ben listened silently for a while. Mark, he said at last, this goes beyond your average HOA nonsense. Threatening a lien over petty stuff. That's extreme. They want you gone. Yeah, I agreed. So what's next? File a lawsuit? You could, he said. But it'll cost you, and if you lose, HOA bylaws might make you cover their legal fees. It's risky. I hung up, feeling a cold pit in my stomach. I was cornered. They had the rules, the legal backup, and time on their side. I was just one man. I wandered into the garage and stared at my truck. The gash in the fender felt like a wound on me. They wanted me to feel this way, defeated, like giving up was my only choice. But standing there, I didn't feel beaten. I felt determined. That truck represented more than machinery. It was memory, pride, effort, and those HOA tyrants, they weren't just hassling my hobby. They were testing my limits. I may seem like a quiet neighbor, but I'm also a former military policeman. I know how to respond when someone tries to muscle you off your turf. My house became a command center. I wasn't ready for lawyers, not yet. First came research. I combed through records, property filings, HOA documents, old court cases. A pattern jumped out. Families forced into foreclosure. Homes mysteriously bought by the same entity. Chestnut Holdings, LLC, seemed local, but reeked of something hidden. I didn't have hard evidence yet, but my gut told me Karen and Richard weren't just power. Hungry,
They were running a calculated con. Digging deeper, I found the LLC was registered out of state, behind a legal wall meant to hide ownership. But walls like that, I've scaled them before. Every evening after work, I followed the trail. Receipts, dummy contracts, concealed liens. My dining table became a war zone, covered in documents and red string. Louis would swing by with a warm beer and cold updates. Karen got a patio heater. He muttered. Bet she used no money. He joked, but the tension in his voice was real. People were being picked off, one by one. And I wasn't going to be next. I called Ben again. I need to ID whoever owns that LLC. I told him directly, Mark, that's the point of them. They're anonymous. You'd need a subpoena, which means a lawsuit you're not ready for. There's got to be another way. I insisted. Some screw up. Everyone slips eventually. True, Ben agreed. They reuse an address, a phone number. Somewhere they cross the wires. You just have to spot it. That was the breakthrough I needed. Back at the documents, I rechecked Chestnut Holdings' registration. It listed a legal agent in another state, but also a mailing address. A P.O. box just one town over. It was a lead. That Saturday, I watched the post office from my old sedan, not the F-100. 4 hours passed. Just as I was about to leave, I saw him. Richard. He hurried inside with a key, opened the box, pulled out a thick stack of mail, shoved it into his briefcase and left. He never noticed me. My heart pounded. This was it, the link. Richard was retrieving the mail for the company buying all the homes he was finding. This was no longer speculation. It was real, but I needed more than just my word. Later that week, I came home to find one of my truck's tires sliced. Not just punctured, slashed, deep and deliberate, no note, none needed. The message was clear. We can hurt what you care about. My security camera caught it. One in a hoodie, face hidden, fast and efficient. But they weren't careful enough. On their wrist, a glint of gold. Richard's unmistakable watch. That was the tipping point. They'd escalated from financial intimidation to actual sabotage. They targeted my truck. Fury surged in me. I wanted to storm over and confront them, but training kicked in. Rage is only useful when it's focused. A blow-up would just land me in handcuffs and then back in victim mode. No, I needed a smarter play. I thought about Jake. His voice lived in my mind. Out in the garage, hand resting on my truck, I whispered, "What would you do?" The answer came fast. Jake wouldn't lose his cool. He'd strike back with cleverness and style. He'd turn it into a game. That's when the plan clicked. Methodical, mischievous, and soaked in the kind of defiance Jake thrived on. I had to get into their house, access their computer, and find the bank records that linked Chestnut Holdings' incoming fines and outgoing home purchases. I had to tie Richard directly to the money, not just the mailbox. But how do you get invited into your enemy's home? You use their obsession, rules. I crafted a Trojan horse from their own bylaws. After a day buried in the HOA covenant, I found it, Article 12, Section F. Any exterior alteration, paint, siding, landscaping, required an in-person consultation with the architectural committee. And who was the committee? Karen and Richard. My fake renovation would be so outrageous they'd insist on a face-to-face meeting. While I kept them occupied at my place, someone would sneak into theirs. That someone couldn't be me. Ben, the lawyer, was out. So I turned to another trusted friend from my MP days. Someone who owed me a favor and had a knack for slipping into places unnoticed. The plan was set. I submitted my proposal, repaint the house metallic purple with racing stripes, add a 10-foot chrome eagle to the lawn, and cover the yard in bright blue AstroTurf. They bit. The next day, I got an email titled simply Meeting. Karen and Richard demanded to meet at my house the following evening at 7:00. They were walking right into the trap. The tension was thick. I wasn't just challenging a fine. I was leading a covert mission. If the plan failed, it wouldn't just cost me money. I'd be up against people who had already proven they'd come after me in the shadows. That night, the air crackled with anticipation. I briefed my old army friend, S., a stealth expert now parked a block away, waiting for the go-ahead. Louis was at home rehearsing his gnome-to-grass ratio of speech, looking nervous. I was the bait. My house was the battlefield. Right at 7:00, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Karen and Richard standing stiffly on my porch, Karen wielding a clipboard like a sword, Richard glaring at my truck, gold watch gleaming. "Let's just get this over with," Karen said, barging into my living room. Explain this ridiculous proposal. I played my role, the clueless homeowner with bad taste. I had drawings, color swatches. I really think the purple will make the eagle pop, I said with fake excitement. Karen looked like she might faint. This is a total violation of our community standards, but the bylaws only say we have to meet. I said innocently, it doesn't say you can reject it here. This was the loophole Ben found. The rules required a consultation, but didn't give them authority to shut it down during the meeting. I used that gray area to drag them into my trap. For 20 minutes, we debated the merits of chrome eagles and purple paint. Meanwhile, the real operation had already begun. It had become an all-out offensive, fought with paperwork. I knew Richard was behind it. Karen may have been the noisy, drunk ringleader, but Richard held the purse strings. As the treasurer, he sent out the bills, kept track of the payments, and quietly spun his web. Since he couldn't touch my truck, he shifted tactics, aiming to drain me financially instead. His new battleground was my bank account, my home, the stable life I was trying to protect. Louis, my neighbor with a passion for garden gnomes, took on the role of neighborhood informant. He'd casually wander over at dusk, pretending to examine his flowers, while updating me on the latest gossip. They're having secret meetings, he whispered one night, eyes wide. Cars I've never seen come and go from their place after dark. Even Louis wasn't safe. He'd been slapped with a violation for excessive lawn decor. The HOA fined him $20 for each gnome. With 53 gnomes that added up to over $1,000, it was outrageous and cruel, but their strategy was clear now. Pile on ridiculous fines until people gave in out of fear or packed up and left. "What's your next move?" Louis asked one evening, clearly worried. "That Richard guy, he stares at your truck like he wants to take a crowbar to it. Let him try," I said, my voice hard. "I'm not backing down, and you're not paying those gnome fines either." "I'm not. Nope, we're fighting this." A week later came the breaking point. A certified letter arrived from the HOA attorney. It claimed I owed $925. If I didn't pay within 30 days, they'd file a lien on my property. A lien? That was their kill shot. With a lien, my credit would tank. I couldn't sell the house, refinance. It would belong to them, in part. All of this over a truck I refused to hide, all because I wouldn't bow to them. I called Ben, Jake's older brother, and a lawyer. I laid everything out, Karen's campaign of harassment, the insane fines, her arrest, the video proof, and now the threat of a lien. Ben was quiet for a long time. "Mark," he said finally, "this is more than some overzealous HOA. Threatening a lien over this nonsense. That's intimidation. They want you gone. I know. So what now? Do I sue? You could, but it'll cost you. These HOA write their rules so if you lose, you pay their legal fees too. It's risky." I hung up, a cold pit growing in my stomach. They had me cornered, backed by the law, by rules written to protect them. I was just one guy. I walked out to the garage, staring at my truck. The scrape down the fender felt like it was on my own skin. This was what they wanted, for me to feel like I had no choice but to give in, but instead of despair, I felt fire. That truck wasn't just metal, it held memories, effort, meaning. They weren't just targeting a vehicle, they were testing me. I might look like the quiet neighbor, but I'd been a military police officer, and I knew exactly how to respond when someone tried to push you off your own land. I turned my house into a base of operations. No lawyers yet, this was recon. I dug through public property records, HOA filings, past court cases, and a pattern jumped out. Families forced into foreclosure, houses suddenly sold, all to one buyer, Chestnut Holdings, LLC. A generic-sounding shell company, local enough to blend in, shady enough to raise eyebrows. I wasn't holding a smoking gun, but my instincts told me Karen and Richard weren't just control freaks. They were con artists running a calculated scam. I dug deeper. The LLC was registered in another state through a legal shield firm that hid the true owners, but I knew how to scale walls like that. Every night after work, I followed the paper trail. Receipts, shell contracts, hidden liens. My dining table became a war zone of documents and red string. Louis would drop by with a warm beer and updates. Karen just got a new patio heater. He'd mutter, "Bet she bought it with stolen gnome money." He joked, but his fear was real. People were being drained dry, silenced one by one, and I wasn't about to join them. I called Ben again. "I need to find out who owns a hidden LLC. I said, "Mark, that's exactly what they're designed to hide. You'd have to subpoena records, and that means a lawsuit, which you don't want to file." "There's gotta be another way," I said. "They must have slipped up somewhere." Ben agreed. "People get sloppy, same phone number, same address. Somewhere they leave a breadcrumb." That was all I needed. I revisited the Chestnut Holdings registration. It listed a legal firm as its agent, but also included a mailing address for contact, a P.O. box located one town over, a long shot, but worth checking out. That Saturday, I camped outside the post office in my old beater sedan, not the truck. 4 hours passed, nothing. Then I saw him, Richard. He hustled inside, opened a P.O. box, and stuffed a stack of mail into his briefcase. He never noticed me. My pulse was racing. That was the link. Richard, the HOA treasurer, was gathering mail for the company buying the homes he was finding. It was no longer a theory, it was fact, but I needed more than just my eyes on him. I needed proof. That night, someone slashed my F1, hundreds tire, not punctured, sliced through, deliberate, no note, just a message, "We can touch what you love." My security camera caught it, a hooded figure, face hidden, but I saw a flash on the wrist, an oversized gold watch, Richard's watch. That was the final line they crossed, going from harassment to threats and vandalism. I burned to storm their house, but training held me back. Anger is a weapon, but only if you aim it right. Going off would get me arrested and make them victims again. No, I needed precision. I needed a trap. I stood in the garage, hand resting on the truck's cool metal. "What would you do, Jake?" I whispered, pretending he was there. I knew the answer. Jake wouldn't lash out. He'd hit back smart and enjoy doing it. And just like that, the plan was born. A careful, slightly sneaky plan Jake would have loved. I needed to get into their house, access their computer, find records linking Richard to the money. How do you get invited into your enemy's home? Use their obsession with rules. I found my Trojan horse in the HOA rulebook. Article 12, Section F. Major changes to a house's exterior needed an in-person consultation with the architectural committee, Karen and Richard. I drafted the most absurd renovation request I could imagine, painting my house metallic purple, adding racing stripes, installing a 10-foot chrome eagle, and replacing my lawn with bright blue AstroTurf. They'd never approve it, and they'd want to stop it in person. Sure enough, the next day, an email arrived. One-word subject, meeting. They wanted to meet at my house the following evening. They were walking right into my trap.
I could have made a fortune, but if I cut a deal just for myself, I'd be betraying everyone else. That would make me no different from the selfish people I was standing up to. I stepped into the garage. The F100 had the new tire on, but I hadn't bothered to wash it. The fender was still scratched. My fingers traced the mark. It reminded me, this wasn't about a truck. It was about crossing a line, about bullies who believed they could grab whatever they pleased. My buddy Jake wouldn't have taken the easy way out. He'd run right into the fire with that crazy smile, not for glory, but because it was the right move. He always defended the underdog. My mind was made up. I wouldn't take the deal, and I wasn't just handing this over to the cops either. That felt too neat, too easy. They had made this personal. They'd messed with my friends, damaged my stuff, threatened where I live. They didn't deserve a quiet takedown. They deserved exposure. I was going to hit them back in a way so precise, so humiliating, they'd never recover. I wasn't just aiming to win. I planned to destroy everything they built, piece by piece. My thoughts sharpened, my focus locked in. My MP background had trained me to think like this, to find what drives people. Richard, greed and jealousy. Karen, hunger for control and ego. Vance, fear of being found out. I needed bait that would hook all three, and the perfect bait, my truck, sitting right here. Richard loathed it because he wanted it. He longed for the lifestyle it represented, a life of independence, skill, creation. He couldn't build it, so he wanted to possess it. The plan came together. It was daring, risky. Timing had to be perfect. I'd sell the truck on paper. I'd slap a sign on it with a price so laughably low that Richard's greed wouldn't let him walk away. He'd think he'd finally beaten me, that he'd won the truck and with it crushed me, but there wouldn't be any real sale. The meeting would be the trap, a staged scene, and I'd be the one pulling the strings. I'd lure them into a room, ease their guard, and get them talking, confessing everything on camera. Their scheme with Vance, all of it. I called S, my buddy from the army, one last favor. I said, I need a space wired for audio and video, top tier, untraceable, and I need you on stand by. Sounds like a blast, he said, no hesitation. Then I rang up Louis. You're on lookout. I told him, and I'll need you to make a call at the right moment. I walked him through his role. He was nervous, but thinking of justice for his gnomes made him rock solid. The last detail was location. Couldn't use my place, too dangerous. I found a bland office in a business park 2 towns away. Paid in cash under a fake name. S rigged it up. A covert surveillance room hidden behind plain furniture. The night before I posted the sign, a strange calm settled over me. No fear, just steady determination. I knew it might blow up in my face, but for the first time in ages, I felt like I was steering the wheel. I wasn't playing defense anymore. They were. I was answering Ben's question. How far would I go to protect my own? The answer, all the way, and I'd show them exactly what justice looked like. I made the sign. The stage was set. Tomorrow it all began. The next morning I parked the F100 at the edge of the driveway, nearly touching the street. I gave it a quick polish. It gleamed red and beautiful. Then I stuck the "for sale" sign in the window. I wrote a price meant to insult $10,000. For a restored classic like this, it was robbery. Anyone who knew trucks would recognize its value. 3, maybe 4 times that. But I wasn't looking for a gearhead. I was baiting one man. I spent the day tinkering with a mower in the garage, door open wide so I could be seen. Around noon, Richard's car crawled past. He didn't stop, just slowed, eyes glued to the sign. I could see the wheels spinning, greed, envy, that I win a moment brewing in his head. He drove to the corner, looped around, passed again slower, and disappeared. 2 hours later, my phone rang, unknown caller. I'm calling about the truck. A man's voice said. It was Richard. He was forcing his voice deeper, sad, still for sale. I replied, playing dumb.
10 grand, is that firm?" he asked, trying not to sound eager.
"Cash gets it," I said. "I just want it gone. Tired of the headaches it's causing, if you catch my drift." I threw that line in for flavor. He grunted. "I might be interested. Where can I see it?" "Not at my house," I said.
"Too many nosy neighbors. I use a small office. Tomorrow 7:00 p.m. Bring cash." I gave him the address. "I'll be there," he said, then hung up. Hook, line, sinker. The next day dragged. Confirmed everything was ready. Tiny cameras hid in smoke detectors. Mics picked up whispers. Louis stood by, ready to act. I'd get Richard there, get him talking. Once I had him on tape, I'd drop the Vance bomb. I bet Richard would panic and drag Vance in. That was my gamble. His fear. At 6:45, I waited in the office. Sat in a van outside, watching the feed. The room was sparse. Metal desk, 3 chairs, blank documents made to look like vehicle forms. At 7:00 sharp, there was a knock. It was Richard, but he didn't come alone. Karen was with him, of course she was. She wouldn't miss a victory lap. She looked around with distaste. Richard slapped a briefcase on the desk. "Let's see the title," Karen snapped. "Let's see the cash." I answered. He opened it, stuffed with $100s. He smirked. "It's all there. Now the keys. Hold on," I said, leaning back. "Let's talk. I need to know it's going to the right home, somewhere it won't cause more trouble." Karen glared. "What's this about? We're buying it. That's all that matters. No, I want to be clear." I said to Richard, "You went to some serious lengths. Fines, liens, even slashed a tire. You really wanted this truck gone. Or maybe you wanted me gone." Richard's smirk disappeared. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do." I slid a paper across the desk. A printout of Chestnut Holdings LC registration. "Recognize this. I saw you pick up the mail for this shell company." Richard went pale.
Karen looked from the document to him, confused. "Richard, what is this?" "It's your company," I said. "The one you used to buy up homes after driving the owners out. A tidy little racket." Richard was sweating. "This is slander. You have no proof. I've got all of it. Bank records, emails, even the ones to your pal on the counter. Say Arthur Vance about that new exit." "That was the trigger," Karen gasped. She turned to Richard, rage and betrayal in her face. "You said that was a rumor. You told me this was just investing." He'd kept the real story from her. Richard ignored her, staring at me, panicked. "What do you want?" "Right now, call Vance, bring him here. The 3 of you are going to sign a confession, dissolve Chestnut Holdings and repay every family, with interest." Richard collapsed into a chair, shaking. He pulled out his phone. "Arthur, we have a situation. The guy with the truck. He knows everything. Here's the address." He ended the call. We sat in silence. 20 agonizing minutes. Then came a knock. Vance entered. Hall polished fake smile. The smile died when he saw me. "All right," he said, trying to lead. "What is this?" The trap was fully sprung. But what happened next? I never saw it coming. Richard spoke first, but his tone had shifted. "No fear, just icy calm." He looked from Vance to me. "He thinks this is about homes and highways." Richard said with a cold chuckle, "He doesn't get the real plan, do you, Arthur?" Vance didn't reply. Richard sneered. "You think this is clever. It's just business, but we saw you coming. You were always a problem. That's why we had insurance." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" Richard grinned. A real bone-chilling grin. "The slashed tire. A warning. The real plan was your brakes. We had someone cut them. Just enough. One day you'd hit the pedal and... nothing. Tragic accident. No evidence." I froze. This wasn't just about stealing property. It was about killing me. That moment, the office door slammed open. Louis charged in, holding a gnome. "I'm not too late, am I?" He huffed. "Cops are on the way, and I'd like to outbid him $11,000. His absurd entrance shattered the tension. Vance bolted for the door. Karen shrieked. Richard lunged. Not for the money, but for me. The climax exploded. Violent and raw. Richard came across the desk, the briefcase spilling cash like leaves. His hands aimed for my throat. I didn't retreat. I advanced, using his speed against him. I dodged his grip and slammed a palm under his jaw. His teeth snapped together, head whipping back. He staggered, stunned, but the fury kept him upright. He came again. He came at me again, swinging wildly. It was a slow, obvious haymaker. I ducked beneath it without effort. As his arm flew over my head, I rose quickly and wrapped him up in a classic bear hug, locking my hands behind his back and lifting him clean off the floor. The air rushed out of his lungs with a painful wheeze. He was stronger than he looked, adrenaline and desperation fueling his resistance. He struggled hard in my grip, twisting and kicking, trying to escape. Meanwhile, the room had erupted into complete chaos. Karen screamed, shrill, useless noise, and snatched the stack of documents off the desk, including the fake title and my carefully compiled evidence. She began shredding them in a frenzy. Arthur Vance, the polished public servant, saw his opportunity and dashed for the door, shoving past poor Louis, who still stood there, gnome in hand, completely stunned. "He's getting away," Louis shouted. Vance was nearly through the exit, but Louis, the retired mailman and gentle collector of gnomes, reacted with startling speed. He didn't lunge or wrestle, he just stuck out his foot. A simple, perfectly timed trip. Vance, looking backward while sprinting, didn't see it coming. He hit the hallway floor hard, his pricey suit ripping as he skidded across the cheap linoleum. He lay there, dazed and wheezing. Back in the office, I still had Richard in my grasp. His resistance was fading, the fight was draining from him. I didn't want to hurt him seriously, just keep him under control. "It's done, Richard." I panted, voice strained from the effort. "Stop now. I'll kill you," he rasped, still struggling. Then, suddenly, a sharp sting stabbed into my side. I looked down Karen. She had grabbed a letter opener and was jabbing it at me, face soaked in tears and rage. One jab had sliced through my shirt, cutting shallow but painful. She lifted it again, ready for another stab. Before I could react, another player entered the scene. The office door, left open by Vance, was now blocked by a large man. It was S, my army buddy. He must have seen the mess on the monitors and come running. In a blink, he took in the situation, me restraining Richard, Karen slashing at me, Vance groaning in the hallway. "Ma'am," S said, voice calm but packed with commanding weight, "put that down." Karen froze. Eyes wide in terror, she stared at a staller, more imposing than me. The fight drained from her body. The letter opener slipped from her grip and clattered to the ground. With her no longer a threat, I finished restraining Richard. I spun him around and forced him face down, pinning his arms behind his back. He began to sob. Quiet, broken cries. It was over. The entire confrontation had lasted less than a minute, but it felt like it had stretched forever. Then came the sound of sirens, soft at first, growing louder by the second. Louis had made the call right on time. 2 police cruisers screeched into the lot, lights flashing red and blue across the walls. 2 officers stormed inside, weapons drawn. They stopped, scanning the room. Cash scattered everywhere, one man moaning in the hall, Karen sobbing, Richard pinned beneath me, S calm at the door, and Louis proudly holding his ceramic gnome. "Freeze!" one of the officers barked. S raised both hands. "We're the good guys. He's the one who called." He added, nodding to me. I looked at the lead officer, Mark. "That's my name. These 3 just tried to kill me. And they confessed everything. It's all recorded." I pointed to the smoke detector. Backup's off-site. My friends got the files. The officer's gaze shifted to the camera, then back to me. Step away from him. I lifted my hands and backed off. The cops cuffed Richard and dragged him up, pale and broken. Karen was led out, still crying. Vance limped behind them, reputation in tatters. Their carefully built empire had just crumbled overnight. In the end, the video closed the case. Wire fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder, a slam dunk. Richard got 15 years. Karen received 5. Vance earned 7, and total public disgrace. Their company was dismantled, and every cheated family got their due. The HOA was shut down. At the first meeting after the collapse, Louis was elected president by mistake. His one rule, Article 1, leave each other alone. He tried to resign. No one allowed it. The day after the sentencing, I buffed out the scratch on my truck, gave it a fresh coat of cherry red, flawless. Jake would have loved the story. He would have roared laughing at Louis, cheered at the takedown, and said, "Told you so." I'd finally found peace, not in the house itself, but in standing up for it. When a man gets pushed too far, he doesn't break. He pushes back, and justice rides a V8.